It is an honor for me to be here today with you. Again, it's a wonderful opportunity to share some of my good practice in terms of foreign aid, in terms of global fundraising. I have been doing this for 30 years, working with the European Union, working with USA, Canada, used to be called CEDA, and then I also working with Japan, and receive funds from Australia, from different countries, from different donors, different structures, different set of donors worldwide. I have been doing this for many years. I also have been teaching about fundraising, managing nonprofits, governance. Right now, I'm teaching a course in Johns Hopkins University about a major donors and institutional fundraising. What is about dealing with the government and how to be effective in terms of winning grants, contracts, cooperative agreement. I also have been teaching at Northeastern University, Columbia University, and working with different organizations, from networks, from grassroots organizations, dealing directly with the impact at the grassroots level, or with the frustration of operating in this whole system of fundraising, and also from international cooperation or international aid. Working also with the governments. I have been working with governments, with international institutions. What I want today is for you to learn a little bit about the whole environment in terms of global fundraising, in terms of the opportunities that you have in front of you, and how to be more effective in terms of reaching those donors, and being able to know where the money is. It's not a guarantee, but knowing where the money is the first priority. So there's a competitive environment right now. They are the same set of donors, the same, we have the same limits in terms of funding. It's not increasing, even though they're in several UN conventions and several UN gatherings and several agreements. We have been promising, all the country has been promising, investing 0.7% of the GDP in aid. It's not the reality. Countries invest 0.1%, like the US, less than 0.1%. Some countries invest 0.4, 5%, but there are small countries. So there is no correlation in terms of the investment. And also, the same amount of money is there for more and more programs, more and more organizations, and we have to be more competitive in terms of the way that we operate. As you can see, yes, the only Sweden probably is the country Sweden, Luxembourg, and Norway, Denmark, closer to that commitment of the 0.7%. But there's very small amount of money, the money that they contribute to the global pot of money that we distribute among different organizations, different countries, different priorities. So it's a challenge. It's a competitive environment, and COVID introduced numerous changes in terms of the trends in cooperation. More money has been going to healthcare. More money has been going also directly to governments, directly to companies dealing with the distribution of healthcare services, or distribution of vaccines and the investigation. So a lot of the resources is the same amount of resources, and they have been going to those additional niche, if you want to call it that way. So it's a more competitive environment than what we have today. So it's there are also trends in this environment. COVID was a major disruptor in terms of the cooperation at the global level and at the local level and the national level changes, and you can see those changes in the structures in each one of the countries, and also the trends at the international level. But COVID is moving on. There are some countries still facing the challenge of COVID, but there are gonna be other priorities in the global agendas. This is the post-COVID time. There are still countries trying to figure out if the sustainable development goals are achievable, the impact post-COVID in terms of social disruption and in terms of governance, the impact in terms of commerce, in terms of wealth distribution. There are many things that came after COVID that we will have to deal with that. So there are going to be new challenge, new approaches, and also funds, global funds tends to follow those changes. And now we are under a more autocratic wave. That means that several countries have been following more totalitarian autocratic patterns, and that reduced the country to country and the global priorities in terms of development and other areas, and tend to focus in more human rights, democracy approaches for those countries. And for the countries they are under the influence of bigger autocrats like China or like Russia, that creates a different kind of set of priorities. There are the new agenda for Biden also in the US. It's a positive change from Trump. To be honest, Trump had no plan and no strategy. And for me, to be honest, for many years, there has been no strategy, and still there's no strategy in terms of foreign aid for the US. But for Biden, is the reallocation of Afghanistan funds. That was the priority for more than 2 decades in terms of the investment for the U.S. Portfolio, and that's going to be relocated. What happened really is a reduction of the funds, and we're gonna talk about that. But there's going to be a relocation of the funds from Afghanistan, and also the fight against corruption. Also, Biden has been promoting something called the Democratic, or the Summit of Democracy, the Democracy Summit, and promised allocation of funds to improve institutions, to improve governance, to improve rule of law, to improve different areas. And for the ones that they are part of some of the groups working with the government right now, we have been pushing for direct funding to local groups, local organizations, without having to pass through the requirement of operating with USAG, US organizations that manage USG funds, US government funds. The Asia agenda is getting more complicated, with China having a stronger voice. So the US has been trying to figure out the areas of operating, and also how to be critical in terms of US economy and security interests. We don't have anymore the Afghanistan priority, so it's more focusing in other countries and other priority areas for the government. And in my own opinion, we're still figuring out that the government is still figuring out where is going to be the best use of the resources, and how to have more impact in several regions, several countries. The EU also has been changing the priorities, and has been looking for other ways to contribute. And we're going to talk more about that today. But the EU is focusing in human rights, education, rule of law, energy, environment, the common threats that we have, and trade and economic relationship. One of my first take in terms of my first view for you in terms of this aid, international aid, the cooperation, or the approach that we have for foreign aid, is that there are different problems in terms of the approaches, in terms of the limit of planning, the limit in terms of long-term and short-term. U.S. approaches are very short-term, 1-2 years approach. When we have endemic problems in some countries, they are long-term problems, and you need long-term solutions and change sometimes the culture, the reality, and engage people to people, people to government, people to international institutions, caring about the people. So we have to think about what are having the U.S. sources and the U.S. priority. Sometimes getting money from the U.S. is damaging your reputation in the region or in the country, but sometimes the only alternative that you have. Sometimes you have also the alternative to follow the priorities from the U.S. in terms of the area of work and adapting a little bit. There are other sources that you can look for. You have north-south type of approaches. You have sometimes the support from Japan, sometimes from Germany, direct support from some government that can help your organization. You have foundations, non-profit contractors that operate also in the environment. That it's kind of a second level approach to the USG funding and other areas. So for me, it's a palette. I'm going to talk more about the palette in a few seconds. You have South-South cooperation. Sometimes some countries, Brazil, India, also provide some support to organizations in neighborhood countries. That is not the major pot of money for foreign aid and for international cooperation. And there's not a lot of good cases. There are some cases in Mexico with some neighboring countries, but country to country in terms of South-South is unless there are some ideological background behind that cooperation. For example, what happened with Venezuela, helping other countries or helping other NGOs to disseminate the Bolivarian revolution. That it's a reality. That is something that happened, but has other interests behind. And sometimes you have to be aware of that. You have the European Union, you have the investment from China in corporative responsibility, and it has been growing and supporting other countries, supporting other organizations. They're still trying to figure out how to deal with this civil society sector in China. You have multilaterals, the World Bank, the UN system. You have some regional banks, the Inter-American Development Bank, African Development Bank, that also provide for support, business, foundations, and nonprofit. Campaigns, in-country sources, in-kind, faith-based, crowdfunding campaigns, social bonds. There are different ways that you can fund your organization. But in my view, that we have a kind of shallow a moment right now in terms that we have more and more needs, but we don't have the capabilities of coordinating the funding, the capabilities of being more effective in terms of those funds that we have available, and rent seeking all over. So organizations and people taking advantage of the foreign aid and calling the foreign aid business because they're taking advantage of the needs of the people to manipulate those needs and use that in their own benefit. I see that there are several problems that we have in the system. There's not enough transparency. So we have rent seeking, so organizations or people taking advantage of the funds and the policies and the structure in their own benefit, and that creating harm to other communities, because sometimes foreign aid creates harm, or sometimes the approaches from some nonprofits, some organizations create harm to communities and the local groups that operate. It's a problem of efficiency too. There's we have a limited amount of money available, but the efficiency is a factor behind. There's no effective collaboration right now. The model that we have right now sometimes is a government, nonprofit, government contractors but you don't have a holistic approach in terms of foreign aid, in terms of cooperation that involve the government, the recipient a nonprofit, or the recipient NGO, the recipient implementer, with the people directly, people to government, people to international institutions, people to governments. So creating that environment in which also the people, the beneficiaries, the community will have a say in terms of the impact, in terms of the money allocation, in terms of how to operate. That is a fundamental part. And also the integration of all the factors working together and not isolated in kind of Iceland, and then at the end failing because of the short term or the isolated approach. And we saw that numerous times at Somalia, Haiti, and you name it. So countries, Mali, countries that even though we had this cooperation, the failure of an approach that is in line with the needs, with the opportunities, with the views, with the culture, it's a factor. We want to change everything, and sometimes it's not possible. So it's power to the people. The burning of the budget. So if you, like me, having in this system for too long, there's a word that I really hate in the implementation process. It's burning the money. It's try to accomplish your budget commitment and using the money into the activities. But if you save money, that is not considered a good thing. You have to burn all the money because they need to justify the budget. So from the bottom to the top, even in the agency, they need to justify the budget, because the reality, if you don't use the budget, next year you're gonna have less money. So there is not incentive for the efficiency. There is no metrics or real metrics into the implementation of the projects. There are a lot of metrics, but not the metrics that you need. So there's a metrics in terms of the number of people that participate in an event, number of people that you train in an activity, or they train in an activity, but not the real impact, the changes in the community, how the project had a real change in the structure. Because sometimes you have to measure long-term impact in terms of the approach that you had in that community. And that's not the way that the foreign aid is established. So that's not the way that they measure. So they need a change in terms. There's no scenario analysis, there's no planning, there's no long-term, and the interaction of all the actors. There is not a way to systematic evaluation what's going on. The innovation and the entrepreneurship moved from the civil society, from the nonprofit NGO sector to the private sector, because there were more opportunities in terms of investment. There were more people that care about those processes. They used to be in the social, in the nonprofit sector. Innovation used to be in this sector, but the changes has been dramatically in terms of the people that prefer to innovate in some new ways to bring change using for profit, using the labs and the opportunity to be an entrepreneur, but in the public sector, in the private sector, sorry. But also there has been improvement in that area too, because there have been some people who keep their social, environmental, community connection, and they have been trying to create some kind of a hybrid, not in line with the advances in terms of rules, regulation, but they have been trying that. This is not the what we're gonna discuss today. And also, there are new approaches in terms of creating labs and creating other approaches. I want to talk a little bit about the art and science of fundraising strategy, data analytics, branding, communication, network, planning, and technology for global fundraising. So in terms of being effective, in terms of reaching what you expect from international donors. So what you have, bro, you have your local donors, you have your business there, but you want to grow and you want to receive. The money is there. So to be honest, there are some organizations that say, I don't need support from the US, I don't need support from other countries, I'm good with what we have. But the money is there. So anyway, the money is there. If you want to ask for support or not, it is up to you. but somebody else is going to compete, and probably somebody else is going to get there. It's the same approach in terms of fundraising. You need to have a leadership when you engage in this process of global fundraising, of international, dealing with the international organization, dealing with the US or European Union structure. You need to have that leadership because you need to have a strong organization that will be able to compete. You need to have systems in place. You need to have advocacy. You need to have the team in your organization. You need to have the storytelling capability. It is important, the storytelling capability at the local, at the national level in your country, but it's more important because some of these donors never gonna go to the country, to your country. They're not gonna have any ability to know what you have been doing. So they will have only your word as a factor of change, as a factor of influence in terms of their decision making. So you need to be able to be passionate. You need to be able to have some metrics. You need to have your methodology. If you want to compete for foreign aid, if you want to compete in the world leagues, in the major leagues, you need to have what it takes. You need to have your structure, your organization in line with what you want to do. You have to have a strong mission, and you need to be good advocate for your organization, for your mission, for your community, for your beneficiaries, for the donor to understand the process, to understand where are you and where you're gonna meet with the donor. And it's more complicated when you compete with organizations that are from the donor's country. So you're competing against them too. So you need to be more effective in terms of how you show the donor that it's gonna be better to give the money to you than the local organization in the US. And in those countries also, there's competing. One organization that I'm supporting right now, the secret of our success, of course, storytelling, structuring, the connection, having the one-on-one, but also it's about the budget, because normally the indirect, the overhead of the majority of the organizations in the US is 38%, 35%. If you add other NICRA and other elements there, if you add salaries like 48% and 50%, sometimes 55%. So what I told this organization, just keep this simple. 10% in terms of overhead and 7-8% in terms of managing the project. And the rest goes directly to the country. So you will have a benefit that you're going to compete one-on-one with the rest of the competitors, but you have an advantage here that you can invest more in country. And it looks a simple approach, but the rest of the organization keep, and they need the money. They are grant seeking. They need the money. So it's impossible for them to compete with that model. And that's one of the benefits from all of your organization, that you can say, we don't need the intermediary. We're going to implement this directly in the community. We don't need to have second level organization. Our cost is only 17-20% of the whole budget. And the rest will be invested directly in change, in providing change in the community. That's a good approach that you can have. In all my classes, I recommend that you have to have a palette with different colors. I'm a painter, so I love to have different colors in hand when I engage in any painting, because that give me option, that give me difference, that give me the opportunity of create something better. You need to think about your private individual giving in your country, the institutional giving in your country. You have to think about service, but you have to think about government too. One of the major failures in some organizations, they think that there's something wrong applying for government funds, applying for international funds, applying for foundation. No, the money's there. So you need to think about that. It's not going to take too much time, and you're going to fail many times. Yes, but what happens if you win? What happens if you find a way? What happens if you figuring out how to enter to the system? you need to figure out how to use these funds in an effective way. So it's thinking about the billions there are there in federal funds in the US that you don't need. That's the biggest mistake. You don't need to be a US organization to compete for those funds. In the US, and let's go first to the US universe. In the US, you have different elements there. There's a mix of private, mission-based nonprofit, government, competing and regulating and having an universe in which you can interrelate among each other and having a whole universe of interaction. And that's how it works in the US. In the US, you have USAID or other sources of USC, US government funds that goes directly to some nonprofit, to a Republican Institute, the National Democratic Institute, Freedom House, different NGOs receive that money and to do things directly or being intermediary as an NGO to any of the organization, like your organization in any country, and operating with them. It's the case of the National Endowment for Democracy. They receive money directly from the government, and they allocate that money in organizations in the world. So you apply to the National Endowment for Democracy, go to the webpage of the National Endowment for Democracy and apply. There are other second level organizations that receive money, and not from Congress directly, but from the agency like USA, Department of State, other, and the EPA. And those also do two things. One, give money to third organizations by request, or because they formulated a project together and work together in that goal and working directly with that. There are some contractors that behave, that nonprofit that behave like contractors, that's supposed to be nonprofit, but they operate as a contractor. So they don't have even a strong mission. They just work directly to implement and charge a fee for that implementation. You have some hybrid, some nonprofit with for-profit operating. You have a pure contractors, for-profit organizations, for-profit business that operates in every country, bringing projects and using the money from the donors to implement strategies, activities, and they are contracts, so they get a profit, openly profit. And then you have international organizations like the World Bank, the UN, that receive that money. It's a whole universe under the funds that you're gonna be have under the USA or the department, so directly by Congress. The European Union works in a similar way, and we're gonna talk a little bit about that. There are a lot of money in there. There are money that goes directly to different funding entities, so directly to the National Endowment of the Arts, the Department of State, the Department of Agriculture, the Department of Health. The majority of those departments, they have international programs. And so you can apply also to those department funds when they open some calls from proposals. So, and you have the contractors, they are already working with them. Sometimes you have some umbrella projects in which they have a pot of money that can help you. So the best approach is doing all. So approaching directly the calls for proposal from the US government, approaching directly the contractors to look for agreements, to look for engagement with them, to look to be partnered with them, looking for other opportunities, but also looking for other governments too. It's not only about the US. And you see different areas of cooperation, from science, economic, education, transportation. There are several areas. Why is important? $32 billion. And this is a bad year. Last year was a bad year. Remember, last year, Afghanistan was the end of the war, the end of the intervention in Afghanistan, the changes, COVID, the priorities internally to invest in health, in medicines in the US. So it was a sustained reduction of the budget during the 12th month of last year. But even with that, you have the priority, $2 billion to East Asia, $2.3 to Europe and Eurasia, Middle East, $12 billion, South and Central Asia, $5 billion, Sub-Saharan Africa, $13 billion, $3 billion for the Western Hemisphere. There is money there in foreign aid. There's money. Those are official numbers, by the way. It was less than the years before. In 2018, in 2019, 2020, it was 48 billion, 51 billions. It's changing right now. We hope that's gonna increase over the time. To apply and to participate in terms of USA and other funds from the US government, you need to know the basic elements about those grants. So they are public grants. They are money that comes from the Congress, approved directly, go to the agencies, and you receive the money, and then you commit to apply the programs. You have the way to apply directly, and you feel the SAMS.gov, grants.gov. My advice to you is to go to grants.gov, and all the steps are there, grants.gov. And you can apply to a SAM, that is a number of registration. And also then you get the DMB, that is a number that you need to have, and you enter to this system and you receive directly the calls from Ponce, and you can apply, even if you are an international organization, and if you are not a US, you can register and you can be part. And my first advice is just enter to grants.gov and ask for the information about updates about upcoming calls for proposals. So just that step is going to help you to figure out what's going on there, and also review for your country, for your region, what opportunities are there. So go directly to grants.gov and figure out what is there and how to be engaged in that. So there are different ways that you can receive public funding. Public funding are federal grants, matching grants, cooperative agreements, contractual, technical assistance, service, a public-private partnership. I have been sending a couple of that, and it's very fun because you build a project with USAID or the government. Value, economic development incentive, research grant, perform-based, innovation support, market-based initiative. There are several ways that you can get money. The three favorite mechanisms for organizations to participate in public grants, it's the grants themselves. That the grants themselves is you win that grant. So you're going to implement that grant. You are more free to implement. You receive funds because of your idea, because of what you believe is a right approach. There's no major controls by the federal U.S. federal government. The cooperative agreement is a hybrid, it's a mix between a grant and a contract, because you present your idea, you're kind of independent, but you have a major oversight from the government. You have to work directly with some of the activities of the government. You have a major involvement, something called substantial involvement from the government in your operations. Then you have the contracts that you are acting in behalf of the government. You're acting in lieu of the government. You're acting as a government representative. So when people get a contract and then complain about government involvement, yes, but it's a contract. So you are operating in the name of the US government. For applying for public grants, and you can apply, everybody can apply for public grants if you follow the steps and register and have your number and register to SAM.gov. And you need to have your motivation. You need to have clear the organization that you have, a strong organization, because they're gonna see that the organization is not as strong. Having a strong infrastructure, because you need to compete with strong organization in the process. Having some track record. If you don't have a track record, try to look for any implementer, any other organization that has been working with the government, and try to partner with the organization, or try also to get engagement with the U.S. Embassy into your country and getting some of the small grants that sometimes the embassy provide, and that can helping you to get that track record, having your timeline, having your budget, having some strategic partnership with other organizations and in the community that you operate. And learning all these words that you use here, the lexicon, what is a comparative review, what is a grant, what is another funding. Just try to learn a little bit about the lexicon that is behind this. And of course, advocacy, and look for the opportunities. So that look for the opportunity, it's important. Not always, it's always what you see there. There are also opportunities that are not there. And if you build strong partnerships, it's building a strong partnership with the embassy in your country, with and opening doors. If you visit the US, you go direct, or apply same for the European Union. So you go there, visit them, pitch ideas. I always pitching ideas, I always pitching new ideas. And sometimes they apply those ideas to other implementer, or they look for me and they give me something that is unsolicited. Because I sent those ideas and they told me, well, it's unsolicited. We are not posting this, but we like your approach for that country of that proposal. Please send us a formal proposal. That's an unsolicited. Then you have a sole source that I bring something that nobody else is bringing to the attention to the administration, and they decided to give me that to my organization, to the organization that I'm working with. So bringing ideas, innovation, having those ideas running around, having something strong behind those ideas. There are so co-creation opportunities, there are consortium, there are special partnership, there are cost extension, there are different ways to operate. And we can have more time talking about this after this presentation, but there are different ways that you can interact with the big donor like the USG or like the European Union. Sometimes apply to both of them. But this is a process. It's a process of how it works. The federal budget, then Congress approval, go to agency, go directly to the public. You apply. You get you're notified about the result, ask you for more information, and then you succeed in terms of fail and learn from the process. First is having your mission. It's defining your market. What is with you? Strategic thinking and planning, having your marketing advocacy plan, and looking for the existing sources of funding that you have at the global level. There are numerous web pages, there are numerous places, but for the US is grants.gov, and the European Union also you are gonna provide you with the link. So, and try to negotiate and build your team. Winning is important, but you need to think about the whole process. In terms of the application requirement, it's not so different than other donors that probably you applied before. You have your narrative, you have the budget narrative, the audit of your organization, having a logic model to show what is going to be the result from your approach and how you're going to bring changes, having your monitoring and evaluation plan, risk analysis, timeline, gender analysis, and other documents that they require. Of course, that needs time. And that if you don't have an organization that have the luxury of people and time, maybe you have to wait, or you have to devote some time to this, because building this, it needs time. And sometimes you don't have the result immediately. Maybe several years pass until you get the first funds. But after you get that, I bet you that you will be receiving funds because you earned the trust from the donor. And grants.gov, look for grants.gov. European Union. European Union is more an internal market. The majority of the funds goes to the partners, to the market, to the European Union countries. And you have several programs that operates under that umbrella. A single market, innovation, cohesion, natural resources, migration, defense and security. So there are different programs, but there's one particular program There is for the neighborhoods, so the countries that are close to the European Union, and for the rest of the world. And programs that are for justice, human rights, equality, food, exchange, global Europe, bringing the image of Europe to other countries, development, humanitarian aid. There are several areas of work in terms of European Union. So in terms of the foreign aid from the European Union, is the first thing is how the neighborhood, the countries close to the European Union, and supporting those countries to achieve certain goals. Of course, because of the pressure of immigrants, the pressure of the countries that are neighbors to the European Union wants for those countries to do better. Then the contribution to sustainable development is another strategy from the European Union. So several calls from proposals are oriented to sustainable development, the environment, numerous proposals for humanitarian aid, relief, humanitarian assistance, sometimes goes directly to some countries, sometimes open. The European Union is different than the US. The European Union also has been facilitating this process internally in some countries. So the US also do that with small pots of money. So giving money to the embassies for small projects managed by the embassy, but they don't have that capabilities. In the European Union, yes, they have been doing this for decades. So having in the local office or country office of the European Union in your country or in the region, the one they operate in the country, you have to access them to see what is available, because they also operate. Sometimes they manage directly the proposal. Sometimes they have a allocation of funds directly for local organizations to compete. Then they have also foreign policy, overseas territory. There are different areas of work and the investment in different areas. The difference between the approach from the European Union and the US is the European Union tends to plan for long term. So the plan is for 5-6 years in terms of the investment. And they made some adjustment in terms of the investment. They follow that. I include this into the PowerPoint presentation, but it's for you to see the process internally. It's the approval by the Parliament, the Council, also the review. It's that the development policies have an element of analysis in terms of the European Union. In terms of humanitarian aid, $1.5 billion in 2021. That's a lot of money. And what you want is to be part of the organization that receive that kind of contribution. Same than the other countries, you have grants. The European Union also has some financial instrument to allow the organizations to co-create and participate directly, trust funds to allocate some amount of money and create the possibility to a future price, subsidies, and the contracts. And there are different elements there that allow the European Union to manage those amounts of money. You can apply directly, looking for the opportunities. The difference between the US and the European Union, and you don't need to apply for the EU, a specific, well, you have to register in their webpage. You have to include your registration process. Some of these elements need to be there, but you don't need to be a contractor like in the US. You register in the web page and you register your information, and those are different processes. But you need to begin the process, include your organization, include all the information from the organization, and look at this link to look for funding. So you need to look the link to see what is available. But if you don't have the experience or the kind of organization, and also if you want to look for a partner that are operating at the EU level, and you have a link there with all the partners that operate at the EU level. My advice, there are different funds that the EU puts together, sometimes with partnership with European organizations. So try to look for a European NGO to partner with the NGO, with academia, with some organizations that can participate directly with some pots of money that probably are not going to be part of the global calls for funding. Also, that helps you, because some countries in Europe also, they have their own funds available. And some local governments, in the case of Spain and in case of Germany, there's some local governments, they also have those funds available. And there are other funds that are managed by entities in those countries. So it's a whole world there that you need to figure out the way how to connect with those implementers and those organizations. So it's a different a set of skills that you need to have, because you need to deal with contractors, you need to deal with directly organizations that operate, a country-based organization, international institution. Other part of money is the money directly from governments. And the best approach, of course, always is to connect with the embassy, make some presentation to some people in the embassy, even though it's a small embassy. I did that with Japan, for example, in several countries, or with Taiwan. And I just got there and make a good connection, build a relationship, build a partnership. And then there are some funds that are available for international cooperation that you get access to those funds just because of the personal relationship. In some funds like Canada, try to look for the foreign aid in Canada. They also have some funds that go internationally, less than the funds that are available in the UK or in the US or the European Union. Used to be better in the past, but there's always opportunity. So you have to look for also the opportunities in several countries, in terms of the approach that you can have to those funds. There are other funds available. There are foundations, several foundations that operate at the global level. So it's looking at those foundations webpage, is looking at this online sources of funding that you can get access and see what's going on there. I'm gonna try in the workshop to give you some tools about what sources available, what links that you need to go to look for that. Business is also an opportunity. Global business, they want to invest in the social responsibility in several countries that they operate. And country-based government sources, you have those sources available. The UN system also, if you are dealing with refugees, the UN has a system that allocate money directly to organizations that operate. Is looking for access directly in partnership with the local branch of the UN system organization that operates in your country. And they also sometimes are second level operators receiving funds from other governments to do something in the communities. Then you have regional banks that also contribute with organizations, the global financial mechanism, the World Bank or IMF, they have projects also with nonprofit. They are market-based financial mechanisms. There have been more and more environmental funds, social funds created for the investment, and those funds needs to be then investing directly in the community. So it's the whole new approach in terms of funding. And then also the crowdfunding. And I want to end in this presentation in a more positive way in terms of the opportunities with crowdfunding also, even though it's not the best alternative. There are several platforms. Every day there are new platforms. They are most effective than the platform years ago. And you have a platform that help you to reach some donors, to organize your fundraising, online fundraising and social media fundraising strategy, use crowdfunding and other direct online strategies for funding. There are numerous. The problem is to select the one that's effective. So there are 34 billion or more directly through crowdfunding, and it's a way to receive funds. But first, you need to evaluate your goals as an organization, because it's not about going directly and ask for money with the crowdfunding. If you don't have clear your goals, you're gonna miss an opportunity there. You have to have, as always, a storytelling, your campaign, your structure, and why people need to support you. The platform is important. Some platforms charge you some percentage of the money that you receive. Some platform doesn't have their own database in terms of potential donors, and you have to provide the database and provide everything. And at the end, there's no advantage for you using that platform. You need to have your network. That's not true that crowdfunding is an open door for funding, that you go there, put your request, and you're gonna get money. No, sometimes it's using your own network, and that's one of the problems. We're gonna talk a little bit about the problems of crowdfunding, global crowdfunding. You have to coordinate your media, online media, with the crowdfunding campaign, that deliver your promise, and then maintain connection with the ones that donor. It's very positive because they are existing platform. They are focusing your mission. Social media capabilities can be used in this, and your storytelling about solidarity can bring donors from different countries, from different places, to contribute with your organization. But there are fees involved. There are too many options there. You don't know, it's going to the market with different products that look the same. That payment processing, it's a pain sometime. Negative use of your data. You provide a data of your donors, of your followers, or the people who engage with your organization. They keep that information, and sometimes some of these platforms resell that information. That's why some people are suspicious about the operation of this crowdfunding platform. You need to have a strong network, but also my major concern with crowdfunding and this kind of mechanism is the overuse. Sometimes you receive from friends, family, people that you don't know, requests from the most frivolous causes. So changing the car, a party for the family member, from the old grandma, and you need a party. So sometimes some people overuse this and abuse the system, and you don't know if the cost is real. So that is why you need to figure out how you use this. Let's go to some advice from doing this for 30 something years. My first advice is changing the view from the recipients. So thinking in going and asking for money in the global arena needs to change also the mindset from asking for money to invite somebody to a partnership. You are inviting international organizations, you're inviting this government to share with you the process of change in your community, in your country, to join your strategy to do something better, to do something good, to join your effort, your organization in terms of that change. You are not looking for money, you're looking for partners in terms of development. I make my donors feel that they are involved in the process of change. They are part of the decision making in the process. They are the ones that organize with me some ideas and participate. They are my partners. And that is important in this, because the sectors I mentioned is very competitive. Then transforming this whole idea of humanitarian aid. I hate that word because it's investment for change. It's not humanitarian aid. You are transforming the community. You are trying to end this business of humanitarian aid. You don't want to support the people to remain poor. You want to change the poor, to move the poor to be somebody who can manage and satisfy all the necessity. So it's not thinking about maintaining the poor. It's about changing. It's about change. And that's a different approach. The whole governance and improving the organization. We have some organizations that are useless because it's just the leader of the organization and nothing else working the organization. With that structure, it's very hard to provide change, including planning, scenario analysis, strategy, whatever you have, because it's a very competitive market. It's a very competitive, and donors also have been learning. So you cannot come with the same information, the same news all over, and the same strategy. Need to improve, need to evolve. Also, you need to work 365 days a year. So directly with the donor. It's not about just reaching the donor as soon as you need the money, or as soon as open call there. I work with the donors years ahead of time. I continue sending message. Even if I have a donor that is in my priority list, I began to send bulletins, information, trying to look for a contact internally, trying to create the channels. And sometimes it takes me a few months, and sometimes it takes me years. But it's my priority to get to that donor inner circle and operate from that. And after you get into the inner circle, you're gonna be better and you're gonna be good to go and continue the operation. But that needs work, that needs effort, that needs investment, that needs having a plan how to engage with that donor. Having the mind of network, the cooperation, the partnership, the collaboration. Donors at the global level love that you have those partners, you have that connection, that you even sometimes some people criticize my approach because I open the project to other organizations, open the engagement to partnership, and not everybody's ready for that. But the donor like that approach. So having those partnerships, having that open, having transparency in your operation pays back. Changing the narrative. It's not about your implementing goals. It's not about what you believe are the implementing goals. It's the impact that you're gonna make in that community, in your beneficiary. That's what you're gonna sell. That's what the donor is gonna like in the future. And the corporations keep changing because of the competitive business. So impact will have a major role in data analytics. We have a major role in this field. Manage your desperation, because if the donor sees that you are desperate for the money, you're not gonna get the money. If you need that urgent money, it's gonna take months and sometimes years. The negotiation process takes time. So you cannot be desperate. So you need to manage that desperation and also manage your frustration. Some organizations cannot deal with a foreign aid, cannot deal working at the global level because they want results immediately. Several cases of organizations, they ask me for support after they fail a couple projects. They're frustrating, insulting the donor. One organization even offered to begin a lawsuit against USA because they were complaining the USA was giving money to the rest of the organization, not to them, because they had a better proposal. Well, yeah, maybe you had a better proposal, but other organizations had a better chief of party. And that's a major difference. You can have the same quality or even a better proposal, but the team and the trust of the organization make the final decision. That is what it is. So the frustration, so deciding to go against the donor, insulting the donor, or frustrating against yourself, because at the end, the donor doesn't need to give you the money. So it's having that in you that you can be able to continue applying and applying and applying, and probably you're gonna apply 50 times. And probably you're gonna apply more. But as soon as you enter into the inner circle of the donor, that's gonna be payback time. You're gonna have the opportunity to continue working, building your network, building your reputation, building your story behind that, and you will have the benefit of that. So having that frustration all the time, also perceived as desperation. So the best approach is having your palette, having different options, and maintaining those options. Not waiting at the end. My recommendation is also have a small percentage of your engagement looking for these kind of funds and trying to apply and exercise your brain in terms of the proposal. And of course, my last advice is storytelling. The best sauce there is storytelling. You need to add this sauce to anything in your organization. Storytelling is key in terms of managing your volunteers, in terms of reaching all the audience, in terms of managing the media, your communication plan, but fundraising and more. When you have a competitive market at the global level, storytelling is one of the key that you need to have there for you. So see you in the interaction, in the workshop, and I will be open to any of your questions.